Patrick hesitated, then moved closer, curiosity overcoming him. He stayed hidden, listening to our conversation. Finally, I have achieved my aim with Patrick. It wasn't easy, but I did it, Chioma was saying, her voice filled with triumph. Now, I just have to wait a few weeks and I will pin this pregnancy on him. He was so stubborn. I had to use every trick in the book. But it worked. He will never know what hit him. Patrick stood there, frozen in place. His heart felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. The woman he loved, the woman he trusted, was plotting against him. She had used him, manipulated him, all for her own selfish desires. Rage boiled inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. His mind flashed back to the kiss with Diamond, the guilt he had felt, and his plan to confess everything to Chioma. But now, hearing this, he realized how foolish he had been. All this time, while he has been beating himself up over a single moment of weakness, Chioma had been living a lie, deceiving him and using him. He quietly turned and left the house, making sure Chioma didn't notice him. As he walked back to his car, Patrick made a decision. If she thought she could outsmart him, she was wrong. He would play along, pretend to be loving, clueless fiancé, and when the time was right, he would strike back in a way she would never see coming. Patrick's day at work was a struggle. His mind was clouded with feelings of betrayal and anger, making it hard to focus on anything else. Every task he completed felt mechanical. His interactions with his colleagues were cold, and his usual charm was nowhere to be found. He managed to get through the day, but the weight of what he had overheard at home lingered heavily on his heart. As the workday came to an end, he reluctantly returned home. He had to keep up the pretense, acting like the loving and devoted boyfriend Chioma believed him to be. His words were sweet, his actions tender, but beneath the surface his mind was calculating, planning his next move. Chioma had no idea that he knew her secret, and he intended to keep it that way, at least for now. A few days later, Patrick and Chioma were invited to a wedding. He attended with her, playing the role of a doting boyfriend. The event was lively, filled with laughter and celebration, but Patrick felt disconnected, his mind still plagued by Chioma's betrayal. As the evening progressed, he spotted Diamond across the room. She was chatting and laughing with another man, looking radiant and carefree. A pang of jealousy struck Patrick. Seeing Diamond with someone else stirred something else inside him, a mix of anger and possessiveness he hadn't expected. He watched her closely, unable to take his eyes off her. When he saw her heading towards the restroom, he couldn't resist following her. Catching up to her just outside the restroom, he called her name. "Diamond!" She turned to face him, surprise flashing across her feature. "Patrick, what do you want?" He took a step closer, his voice tinged with bitterness. "It seems you have moved on quickly to another guy. You ladies are so shameless, kissing me one day and with another man the next. Tell me, how much do you charge per night?" Diamond's eyes widened in shock at his harsh words. Without hesitation, she slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed in the hallway. "I think every girl is the same," she spat, her voice shaking with anger. "For your information, I have never been touched by any man, and I am keeping myself for the right guy. Kissing you the other day was just a mistake." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Patrick standing there, rubbing his cheek where she had struck him. Her words echoed in his mind, and for a moment, he felt a deep sense of shame. He realized he had let his own frustrations with Chioma cloud his judgment, and in doing so, he had unfairly lashed out at Diamond, who had done nothing wrong. As he watched her disappear into the crowd, Patrick felt a strange sense of emotions, regret for what he had said, anger at himself for being so harsh, and confusion about the feelings he had for Diamond. The next day, Patrick couldn't shake the guilt he felt from his harsh words to Diamond, he was determined to make things right, so he decided to visit her at home. Since he had dropped her off after their previous encounter, he knew where she lived. Gathering his courage, he went to her place and knocked on the door. When Diamond opened the door and saw him standing there, her surprise was evident. "What are you doing here?" He looked genuinely apologetic. "I came to apologize. I was completely out of line yesterday and I regret every word I said. Please forgive me." She studied him for a moment, her expression softening as she saw the sincerity in his eyes. "You really hurt me with what you said, but I can see you are sorry." "Thank you," he said, relief washing over him. They talked for some time before he headed home. One night, as Patrick and Chioma lay in bed, Patrick, who had been tossing and turning, finally managed to drift off to sleep. Chioma's phone suddenly rang. Patrick stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Chioma, startled, quickly grabbed her phone from the bedside table and glanced at Patrick to make sure he was still asleep. Seeing that his eyes were closed, she carefully slid out of bed, taking the phone with her. She tiptoed out of the bedroom, gently closing the door behind her before making her way to the living room. She checked the caller ID and saw the name flashing on the screen. A smile crept onto her face as she answered the call. "My love," Chioma whispered into the phone, her voice filled with affection. "I miss you so much." Patrick, who had been slightly dozing, awoke the moment Chioma left the room. He noticed the absence of her warmth beside him and heard her voice coming from the living room. Curious, he quietly stepped out of bed and tiptoed to the door, careful not to make any noise. He cracked it open just enough to hear the conversation. "I love you too," Chioma continued, her tone sweet and loving. "I can't wait to be done with this idiot and be with you. Just a little longer and everything will fall into place." Patrick's heart pounded in his chest as he listened, the reality of the situation hitting him like a ton of bricks. He leaned closer, straining to hear every word. "I will be telling him about the pregnancy soon," Chioma said, her voice dripping with malice. "Once we are married, we will have access to all his properties. Just think of the life we'll have together. It will be perfect." Patrick's blood ran cold. The woman he had loved, trusted and planned to spend the rest of his life with was plotting to deceive him in the worst possible way. He clenched his feet, every fiber of his being screaming in anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed to know more before he acted. As soon as Chioma ended the call, Patrick quickly and silently slipped back into bed, pulling the covers over himself and closing his eyes. His heart was racing, but he did his best to steady his breathing, pretending to be asleep. A few moments later, Chioma returned to the bedroom, her footsteps light and cautious. She slid back into bed beside Patrick, her expression serene, as if nothing had happened. She curled up next to him, her head resting on his chest. Patrick lay there motionless, his mind full of thoughts and emotions. He couldn't believe how much Chioma had changed, how she had become this cold, calculating person who was ready to betray him for wealth. The realization was overwhelming, and he knew he had to do something before it was too late. This was too much for him to bear, but he knew he needed to be smart about his next move. He had to find a way to protect himself, his assets, and his heart from further damage. The time to act was coming, but for now, he remained still, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next day after work, Patrick couldn't shake the frustration he felt from everything that had happened. He needed a plan, and he needed help, someone he could trust. That's when Diamond came to his mind. She had her own experience with betrayal, and maybe, just maybe, she would be willing to help him out. He called Diamond and asked if they could meet at a restaurant that evening. She agreed, though she was curious about what he wanted to discuss. When they sat at the restaurant, Patrick didn't waste any time. After they exchanged pleasantries and ordered their food, he leaned in, his voice low and serious. "Diamond, I need your help," he said. Diamond tilted her head, confused. What kind of help? Patrick took a deep breath, knowing how crazy his plan would sound. "I want you to enter into a contract marriage with me." Diamond's eyes widened in shock. "A contract marriage? But, Patrick, you are engaged. What are you talking about?" Patrick signed and then began to tell her everything that had happened. The phone call he had overheard, Chioma's deceit, and how she was plotting to trick him into raising another man's child. As he spoke, the pain and anger were evident in his voice. Diamond listened, her heart sinking for him. She couldn't believe someone could be so manipulative. "I am so sorry, Patrick," she said softly. "I can't believe she would do that to you." Patrick nodded, his jaw clenched. "That's why I need to do this. I need Chioma to think everything is going according to her plan. But instead, I want to marry you. It's the only way to protect myself and make sure she doesn't ruin my life." Diamond thought about it. She had just been through a painful heartbreak herself and knew how much betrayal hurts. Patrick's situation was even more worse because it involved deceit on such a deep level. After a moment, she nodded. "Okay, Patrick, I'll help you. I know how it feels to be betrayed, and I won't let her get away with it." Relief washed over Patrick's face. "Thank you, Diamond. I promise I'll make sure you are well compensated for this." But Diamond wasn't done. She raised her hand, stopping him. "I have a few conditions, though." Patrick leaned back, curious. "Go ahead." "First," Diamond began, "no intimacy between us while this contract is in place." Patrick smiled, finding her seriousness both amusing and challenging. Said, winking at her, "I won't do anything without your consent." Diamond smiled, but she wasn't finished. "And second, no other woman can visit you, or, like a girlfriend, during this contract." Patrick couldn't help but laugh. "So, no intimacy with you, and I can't get it anywhere else either. How do you expect me to survive?" Diamond chuckled, shaking her head. "You will manage, Patrick. It's not the end of the world." The next day, Patrick called Diamond to his office. He had already prepared the documents, detailing everything they had agreed upon. As she sat down to review the documents, Patrick watched her carefully. This was a gamble, but it was one he was willing to take. He knew that Chioma wasn't going to give up easily, and this was his best chance to outsmart her. As Diamond flipped through the pages, Patrick felt a mix of relief and anticipation. This plan could turn everything around, and with Diamond's help, he could finally free himself from Chioma's grasp. He just hoped that in the end, it would be all worth it. After 2 days, Chioma nervously approached Patrick. She had been rehearsing how to tell him about the pregnancy, expecting him to get upset, considering how they hadn't planned for a baby. But when she finally told him, his reaction was nothing like she imagined. Patrick's face lit up with joy. "Chioma, this is an amazing news," he said, wrapping her in a tight hug. Chioma was surprised but relieved. She had prepared herself for anger, but instead he seemed genuinely thrilled. "I can't believe it," Patrick continued, his excitement contagious. "We are going to be parents. Let's go out tonight and celebrate." That evening, Patrick took Chioma to one of the nicest restaurants in town. They laughed and talked about the future, and Patrick made sure Chioma felt like the most special woman in the world. He didn't waste any time. He proposed to her, and of course, she said yes. Their parents were overjoyed when they heard the news, and soon wedding preparations were in full swing. Everything seemed perfect. The invitations were sent out, the venue was booked, and Chioma was floating in air, excited to start her life as Mrs. Patrick. Little did she know, Patrick was planning something far different. While Chioma was busy with the details of their wedding, Patrick was secretly making arrangements with Diamond. He had set the same date, same time, and same venue for both weddings. It was a risky plan, but Patrick was determined to see it through. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Chioma looked stunning in her gown, her makeup flawless, and her heart full of joy. She arrived at the court early, surrounded by family and friends, waiting eagerly for Patrick. But as the minutes ticked by, she began to get nervous. An hour passed, and still no sign of Patrick. Chioma's hands started to tremble, fear creeping into her heart. What if something had happened? What if Patrick had changed his mind? When Patrick arrived, relief washed over Chioma as she saw Patrick walk into the courtroom. A confident smile on his face, she felt her anxiety melt away. Everything was going to be fine, she thought. The ceremony began, and the magistrate read out their vows in a strong, clear voice. But then the moment came. Patrick looked at the magistrate and said, "Sorry, but my bride is on her way." Confusion spread through the room. Chioma's heart skipped a beat. Before she could react, the door swung open, and in walked Diamond like a queen, her beauty captivating everyone in the room. Patrick couldn't take his eyes off her. Even though this was supposed to be a contract marriage, he couldn't help but think, "I don't think I can let this girl go." Everyone turned to look at Diamond as she made her way to the front, whispers filling the courtroom. Chioma's confusion turned to panic. Patrick took Diamond's hand as she reached the front and turned to the magistrate. "My wife-to-be is here. Can we proceed?" The magistrate, clearly puzzled, asked, "What is happening?" Chioma, now on the verge of tears, shouted, "Patrick, what is going on? Why do you want to disgrace me like this? I have only loved you. Is this what I get in return?" Patrick's expression hardened. "No use lying anymore, Chioma. I already know why you were forcing me to be intimate with you without protection. And all the fuss about getting pregnant is because you wanted to pin another man's pregnancy on me." Chioma's face went pale. "That's not true," she protested. "Oh, it is," Patrick said coldly. "I overheard your conversation that day. After you tricked me, I came home to pick up some documents and heard you talking to your lover about how you achieved your aim and could finally pin the pregnancy on me. You even talked about how you two could have my properties after marrying me. I know everything, Chioma. That's why I played along until today to expose you." Chioma was stunned and unable to find words to defend herself. Her mother, desperate to salvage the situation, interjected, "That cannot be true. Our daughter has only known and loved you. Patrick, do not disgrace us like this." Patrick's mother, equally shocked, turned to him. "Patrick, what is all this?" Patrick remained firm. "Mom, ask her if I am lying. She only wants to marry me for my properties. She's pregnant with another man's child. Ask her if the pregnancy is mine." All eyes turned to Chioma. Her mother, with a trembling voice, asked, "Is this true?" Chioma couldn't bring herself to deny it. The truth hung in the air like a dark cloud. Overwhelmed with shame, she turned and fled from the courtroom, her mother running after her, pleading for an explanation. Patrick signed, turning back to the magistrate. "Let's proceed, please." With the drama behind them, Patrick and Diamond exchanged their vows, happiness evident in their eyes. Once the ceremony was over, Patrick introduced Diamond to his parents. Though initially shocked by the turn of events, they had no choice but to accept her after hearing what Chioma had done. Unknown to them, this was just a contract marriage, but in that moment, it felt as real as any. After everything settled down, Patrick took Diamond to his house. As night fell, he casually mentioned that she would be staying in his room, as married couples do. Diamond raised an eyebrow. "But we are only married on paper. I want my own room." Patrick chuckled, leaning against the door frame. "Are you scared? I already promised not to touch you without your consent." Diamond shook her head, determined. "Just let me have my own room." He smiled slyly. "Or maybe you don't trust yourself. You might be the one to make the first move." She smiled, knowing deep down he was right. She did like him. But instead she teased, "No, It is you I don't trust." In the end, Patrick let her have the master bedroom while he moved to the guest room. The next morning, Diamond was up early and made breakfast. Patrick was surprised by how delicious the food was. As he ate, he found himself falling more and more in love with her. A week later, Diamond started her exams, and within a few weeks, she was officially a graduate. Overjoyed, she shared the news with her parents, who were thrilled. She hadn't told them about the contract marriage, knowing they might not understand. Since it was just a contract, she figured there was no point in telling them. She simply said she planned to stay in the city and find a job. One weekend, Patrick and Diamond were home, playing and teasing each other as usual. But this time, one thing led to another, and they became intimate for the first time. Patrick was surprised to discover that Diamond had truly been a virgin, just as she had told him. Now that he knew, he couldn't bear the thought of letting her go. They couldn't get enough of each other and always wanted to be around one another. One evening, Patrick gazed into her eyes. He confessed, "Diamond, I am in love with you. I can't let you go. Please be mine for real." She smiled, her heart full of the same love. "I feel the same way." With that, they decided to make their marriage real. They visited Diamond's parents and told them everything. Though her parents were initially upset when they knew Diamond had never disappointed them before, Patrick paid her bride price and they had a small traditional wedding with only family and few close friends present. They returned to the city, their love growing stronger than ever. A few months later, Diamond started feeling sick. When they took a pregnancy test, it came back positive. Patrick was over the moon, thrilled at the prospect of becoming a father. But then, out of the blue, he received a disturbing message from a strange number. "You are not responsible for Diamond's pregnancy." The message shook him to the core. Memories of what happened with Chioma resurfaced, filling him with dread. Even though he trusted Diamond, the pain of being deceived once before made him question everything. When he got home that day, his mood was sober. After dinner, Diamond noticed his strange behavior and asked what was wrong. "I want a DNA test," he blurted out. Diamond was stunned. "What do you mean?" she asked, hurt evident in her voice. "I just want to be sure," he said, his tone almost pleading. "So all this time, you didn't even trust me?" she asked, her eyes welling up with tears. "No problem. Arrange for the test. But just know that after the test, I am leaving you. I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me, especially not after I have given you everything, including my first time." Patrick felt a pang of regret. "No, you can't leave me. I love you, Diamond. I got a message from someone today, and I just had to do this. Please, understand." Diamond didn't answer. That night, she slept in the guest room, leaving Patrick to wrestle with his guilt. The next day, they went to the hospital for the DNA test. 3 days later, the results came back. Patrick was indeed the father. The relief he felt was overshadowed by anger at himself for doubting his wife. When he got home, he told Diamond about the result, expecting her to be relieved as well. But instead, she was furious. "I can't be with you anymore," she said coldly. Without another word, she packed her things and left for her parents' house that day, leaving Patrick to grapple with the mess he had made. Patrick tried calling Diamond throughout the day, but she wasn't picking up. The realization that he couldn't do without her was hitting him hard. Meanwhile, Diamond was on her way to the airport when a car suddenly overtook the taxi she was in. Before she knew it, she was kidnapped, blindfolded, and taken to an unknown location. When she finally realized where she was, her eyes widened in shock as she saw Chioma and Umar standing before her. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. Umar sneered. "I told you, you can't get away from me. You cheated me, and now I will be your last." Chioma added with a bitter edge, "You took Patrick away from me. I won't let you two be happy." Diamond shouted back, "I never took him from you. Your unfaithfulness did that." Chioma slapped her hard across the face. "Don't worry," she said, her voice cold. "You won't have him either." Before we dive deeper into this intense moment, if you are watching this story, go ahead and give us a quick subscribe and tap that notification bell. That way, You will always be the first to catch our latest adventures. Diamond, stubborn as ever, turned to Umo. You will never have my body, you idiot. Thank God I realized what kind of man you are before it was too late. Umo's face twisted in anger. We'll see about that. The next day, Patrick received a chilling call. The voice on the other end was cold and demanding. Diamond has been kidnapped. If you want her back, pay 50 million and don't involve the police. Patrick was devastated. He blamed himself for everything, but when the kidnappers called again to tell him where to drop the money, a twist of fate occurred. In the remote bush where Diamond was being held, a local farmer noticed an unusual activity. Curiosity got the better of him, and when he peeped closer, he saw Diamond tied up and surrounded by her captors. The farmer immediately ran to the nearest police station to report what he had seen. As luck would have it, Patrick was at the police station at that very moment, about to file a report on Diamond's disappearance. The farmer's description of the captive matched Diamond perfectly. Without hesitation, Patrick joined the police as they rushed to the scene. When they arrived, they found Umo trying to force himself on Diamond, his eyes wild and twisted desires. But before he could do anything, Patrick charged at him with all the fury he had been holding back. His fist connected with Umo's face so hard that the man was knocked to the ground. The police had to intervene to stop Patrick from inflicting further damage. Chioma stood frozen in shock as the police arrested her and Umo. Patrick, his breath raged, turned to Chioma with a mix of anger and pity. Can't you just let us be? I never knew you could be this wicked, especially in your condition. Chioma broke down in tears, pleading for forgiveness. She confessed that the man that got her pregnant abandoned her after hearing how Patrick jilted her. Then Umo called one day, suggesting we teach you and Diamond a lesson. I was hot and I fell for it. Patrick looked at her with disgust and pity, then spat on the ground. The police led Chioma and Umo away, their fates sealed by their own bitterness and greed. Patrick gently helped Diamond up, his hands trembling as he pulled her close. I am so sorry, he whispered. I should have trusted you. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. After everything had settled and Patrick and Diamond were back home, Patrick took her hand, his voice soft. Diamond, I have learned something through all of this. Trust is the foundation of love. I let my fears and doubt cloud my judgment, and it almost cost me the one person I loved the most. I am so sorry for not trusting you when I should have. I promise to always trust you and to never let anything or anyone come between us again. Diamond smiled, feeling a sense of peace. As for Chioma and Umo, they remained locked up, their schemes having brought them nothing but ruin. After Chioma gave birth in prison, her mother took the baby, while Chioma continued her jail term. 7 months later, Diamond gave birth to a bouncing baby girl. Patrick and Diamond smiled at each other, their hearts full as they gazed at their beautiful newborn. They had weathered the storm together, and now they were ready for a lifetime of happiness. Did you enjoy our story? If you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, drop a comment below, and of course, hit that subscribe button. And while you are at it, click the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. Thanks for watching and see you in the next tale.